And so it occurred to me that if there's no free will, then there's no free thinking. And that eventually inspired the free thinking argument, which shows that if naturalistic determinism is true, which is held by many atheists, it was held by him, then the entirety of human mental activity is determined by non-rational and mindless stuff.
I'm talking about Freethinking Ministries. I have gotten in conversations with agnostics, with atheists, even with some Christians who I'll make a statement, or, I have fairly strong opinions on some things. And so I'll say something and they'll say, oh, so much for free thinking, taking a dig at the name of the ministry. Right. And so often it'll be atheists that say, you're not a free thinker because you have faith, that sort of thing, which I think is just completely off base. But with that in mind, some people might wonder, where does the name come from, Freethinking Ministries? Why that moniker, when it is oftentimes associated with atheists who call themselves freed thinkers or people that aren't shackled by faith? So where did that come from, and why do we call ourselves that?
Yeah, so I guess there's several catalysts, if you will, behind the name Freethinking Ministries. First, just, biblically and theologically, I love how Paul tells us to take our thoughts captive in 2 Corinthians 10:5, right? So he's talking about our thoughts here and says that you're the kind of thing, the kind of thinking thing who can take your thoughts captive to obey Christ, and then warns us that we can be taken captive by bad thinking in Colossians 2:8. He's saying don't be taken captive by shallow philosophy. Well, that's basically what we've got here is Paul is telling us to take our thoughts captive before bad thinking takes us captive. And this is the battle of the mind, the battle over how we think. And this seems to imply that you are a free thinker. You are in control of at least some of your thoughts and many of your important thoughts. And your thoughts ultimately, and I would say at least indirectly, determine what you believe about reality. And so in our world today, it's just full of really bad thinking. Our culture, our world seems to have been taken captive by really bad philosophy. And Paul warns us against that in Colossians. So I think that Freethinking Ministries is an organization devoted to helping people take those thoughts captive so that they no longer are being taken captive by these bad thoughts, this bad philosophy, and just bad thinking in general. So, yeah, I think that implies that we're free thinkers. That is to say that something or someone else is not determining the entirety of human mental activity. And thus, you and I, humanity in general, we are responsible for at least some of our mental activity. So that's the first thing. And then second, it was my discussions with new atheists back in 2008 when I started seeing that I needed to have some apologetics to back up what I knew about the gospel and things like that. So yeah, I'd say between 2008, 2010, I really started interacting with some new atheists in the area, some college professors at the University of Nebraska at Kearney, especially one guy in particular who was a science professor. He was the most aggressive atheist in the area. And I started interacting with him. We actually became friends. We're still friends to this day. And we've had some really good conversations. But really, one of the things that he said back in that 2008 to 2010 time period, he claimed that he was a free thinker and that I wasn't, but then he denied free will. He was a scientific determinist. And so it occurred to me that if there's no free will, then there's no free thinking. And that eventually inspired the free thinking argument, which shows that if naturalistic determinism is true, which is held by many atheists, it was held by him, then the entirety of human mental activity is determined by non-rational and mindless stuff, as Joshua Rasmussen would say. I love how he, I'm always talking about that this is non-rational, non-thinking stuff that determines all of our thoughts. And then he's got a great way with words. And he's just like, yeah, that's mindless stuff that's controlling everything in our minds if this atheistic view is true. But if Christianity is true, then humanity is we're created in the image and likeness of God. And if God is not determined by the laws and events of mindless nature, then it stands to reason that humanity could be created to not always be determined by the laws and events of mindless nature. We would be created, fine-tuned, and intelligently designed to reach true beliefs about ultimate reality if we're careful, right? But that carefulness condition entails libertarian freedom, libertarian free thinking. But here's the bottom line. Free thinking makes sense if Christianity is true. However, if atheistic naturalism is true, as J.P. Moreland has argued in the academic literature, and he's got more coming out on this very soon. We can talk about that later. But J.P. Moreland has argued that libertarian freedom or free thinking does not fit in a naturalistic worldview. There's a handful of naturalist philosophers, I think, who are starting to see the need to affirm libertarian freedom and libertarian free thinking. And JP is saying not so fast. If you're going to affirm naturalism, libertarian free thinking doesn't fit. So, as I sometimes say, free thinking atheists are oxymorons.
Okay.
It's just an
not
oxymoron.
morons. They're not morons.
Morons.
They're just
Free thinking atheists are oxymorons. And that is to say that the two ideas do not fit nicely with one another. They're kind of opposed to each other. However, if Christianity is true, we should expect humans to be free thinking agents with this libertarian freedom.